The natural world is a fascinating and beautiful place. Human beings are part of the natural world. We're not separate from it. One of the best ways of understanding the beauty of the natural world is by looking at the animals within it and investigating their behaviour. My name's Dr. Paul Rose, and in this short presentation we're going to look at some of the reasons why humans are so interested in animal behaviour and why it's been studied so extensively. The behaviour of non-human animals can be incredibly obvious to us. And this fascinates us as human beings. We're keen to know more about why and how the behaviour is being performed. And for some species and for some behaviours, like the elaborate courtship display of the peacock, the behaviour has become the catalyst for a whole new scientific theory. And as we know more about the animal, and as we study it more closely, we become to re-evaluate and reassess those scientific theories as we learn more about the reasons for these actions and why they might be occurring. Humans like to have animals around, be that as domestic pets or as how we encourage wildlife into close proximity of our own homes. Feeding garden birds, for example, is one of the most popular pastimes, and in some parts of the world is a huge industry, generating enormous amounts of money. Connection with nature is something that has been shown to improve the quality of life in human beings. It reduces stress, it reduces anxiety, it provides us with vital connections to our roots in the natural world. Not only do we feed and encourage animals into our gardens, we also can therefore study them more closely, because this closer proximity to nature allows us to see what the animals are doing in much more detail. And this has sparked interest in the reasons why such behaviours might be performed, and comparison between similar types of behaviour that we see in the human animal too. When we encourage animals to live alongside of us, be that as feeding the birds in our garden, or by putting up nesting boxes so we're able to watch the whole reproductive cycle of the animal around us, we're intrinsically increasing our connection to nature. And this connection to nature is something that has not only inspired science, but has also inspired other aspects of human evolution and culture too. Studying the movement patterns of animals has told us about the seasons and has told us about the rhythms of the natural world. The picture that we see here of this diverse habitat of a range of shapes, colours and movements has inspired artwork. We are fascinated with the complexity and the visual appeal of the animals that are around us, and we have documented and explained this in our own works of art and in our own pieces of writing. The natural world has inspired human creativity in other ways too. This is the song of the nightingale, one of the most beautiful and elaborate calls in nature. It has been responsible for the inspiration of poetry and music and romantic offerings that humans have provided to one another. This song of love, sung by the male nightingale to attract a female, has been an inspiration in cultures around the world where this bird has been found. So not only have we had inspiration for artwork from nature, we have also used nature as an art form of its own, and we've only been able to do this by an understanding of what animals do. Domestication, for example, these domestic fancy goldfish, that's only been possible by understanding how and when such animals breed. Less artistically, but still important, is the use of nature in technology. Assessing pigmentation, the chromatophores or skin cells that help cuttlefish change colour, has been used in development of camouflage for the military. This industrial and creative flair that we as human beings have is down to our large brains and cleverness. This intelligence comes from our primate ancestors. And one of the most important ways that humans have looked at animal behaviour in the past is to work out our own evolutionary history. Where do we come from, and why do we perform behaviours in a similar way to what we see in other non-human primates? The gestures, facial expressions, and abilities to communicate with one another, as we can see in that chimpanzee, are all down to our own evolutionary relationships with our closest ancestors. So studying the tree of life, of where primates have come from, and how human beings fit into the primate family tree, enables us to better understand our own behaviours as well as the cultures that have developed in different parts of the world. And we can directly explain why we are such a social, highly creative, incredibly complex animal based on the types of actions that non-human primates perform. Food sharing, for example, common across human cultures, can be seen in many species of primates, both within related individuals, between kin, as well as between individuals that are not related but are close associates, or as we would say, friends. A range of human behaviours are well explained by studying primates. The use of toys in children, the fact that we like to gather together and share time with others and share information, as well as how we look after our young and our old. All of these things mould the behaviour of the individual, both in the human and in the non-human primate, and therefore provides us a way of better interpreting differences and similarities, both within our own species as well as with our closest relatives too. An understanding of human behaviour and its origins can go back further than just simply looking at the primate family tree. We can understand a lot about the different types of behaviours that we perform, those that are sexually selected, those that are naturally selected, those that have an adaptive function, those that enable us to perform homeostatic requirements, by looking at the natural world and by looking at non-primate animals. We need to remember how much genetic information we share with other animals, including those that are not primates. So studying a diverse array of taxa, looking across different taxonomic groups of different species, is really key to the understanding of our own species, as well as our understanding of where we fit within the natural world itself. When we look at topics that have been studied by human evolutionary psychologists, we can see that some types of behaviour and some behavioural theories predominate, but a wider range of behaviours within the human animal can be explained and understood by looking at the natural world. For example, sexual selection and sex differences occur commonly in the human evolutionary psychology literature. I've given an example of this already with the peacock. Looking at the display of the peacock tells us about sexual selection and the drive to find a mate, and how that links to some of our own traditions and cultures, as well as sex differences themselves in the appearance of animals. For example, the two mandarin ducks in those photos. Sexual dimorphism and how we have mimicked that in human cultures can be explained by looking at the natural world. But we can also look across a range of behaviours that directly correlate with our own actions. Parent-offspring relations, for example, how we care for our infants, and how one day our infants will care for us. As well as more complex behaviours like reciprocity, how individuals will do something for another animal around them. Can they be altruistic? Human beings are incredibly altruistic in their actions, as well as being incredibly selfish. This can all be explained by the natural world. And finally, we can look at complex ideas of cognition and the expression and processing of information. How hummingbirds use feeders and how they travel between feeders that shows spatial awareness is something that directly translates with our own abilities as a highly cognitive, complex animal that can utilize information for future problem solving. This paper by Joy Mensch explains some of the more practical reasons as to why we should better understand animal behaviour. We keep and manage animals in a range of situations, be they as pets, in zoos, in conservation projects, in agricultural situations, or in laboratory settings for our own experimentation. Studying behaviour enables us to better understand animal welfare. We as human beings are increasingly aware of the importance of a good quality of life. We must take care of our psychological health as well as our physical health. We must also do this for the animals we care for too. It's worth remembering that behaviour is what animals do to interact with, respond to, and control their environment. By studying how behaviour is performed and what elicits its performance, we are able to work out the function of that behaviour to the individual. Careful observations of behaviour provide us with a great deal of information about animals' requirements, preferences and dislikes, as well as their internal states. Behaviour allows us to infer what an animal may be thinking or feeling, so long as we are aware of those species-typical behaviour patterns and their evolutionary basis. Our understanding of the evolutionary basis of non-human animal behaviour allows us to better understand our own behaviour patterns and why we might get stressed or anxious in certain situations. It is only by understanding how behaviour has evolved to keep us alive and safe can we work out why we perform some behaviours when we are leading our own busy modern lives that might cause us stress, and how we can change our behaviour patterns to reduce that stress and improve our own quality of life. The human-animal relationship is an incredibly important one in some aspects of our lives. This is a colleague of mine who studies the relationship between riders and the horse that the rider is sat on. This is an ancestral relationship that goes back to the dawn of human evolution. There is an intrinsic link between how horses respond to the cues given by the human riding them. That human-animal relationship can be influenced by a wide range of factors, including how the rider feels, the rider's psychological state and level of stress. Animals are incredibly responsive to humans, and we are incredibly responsive to them. By understanding the human's behaviour when it's interacting with the animal, we can get a better idea of why the animal is performing the particular actions that it is around the human. And likewise, we can understand human responses to animals to promote the positive aspects of the human-animal relationship and to better educate people in how they do respond to animals, so we can remove the performance of any outdated practices that are not beneficial to the animal's welfare and that are not beneficial to the human's interactions with the animal either. We have been studying, observing, and investigating animal behaviour for a very long time, right the way back to the ancient Greeks, when the very first documented book on animal behaviour was produced by Aristotle, as well as other complex civilizations around the world, the ancient Egyptians, Imperial China, and the Mayans, who were all interested in various aspects of the animals that were around them, and documented and explained animal behaviour so it could be passed on into the future. These historical artefacts, whilst we must be mindful of how they have been collected and their reasons for collection, are still useful to us today. Comparative studies of anatomy and physiology, as well as more refined techniques in genetic analysis that allow us to piece together evolutionary relationships, can again directly inform our own behaviour, as well as our understanding of our impact on the planet and how we can mitigate any negative or harmful effects that we have on the natural world by our own actions. It's important to remember that animal behaviour is not just what animals are doing at that particular time. It's a complex process that explains all of the evolutionary processes that have formed the modern day animal. It is a window onto the past, not only for that species we might be studying, but also for us too. And that's going to become even more important in the future, as we meet the challenges faced by agriculture, by a growing human population, by a need to feed a larger number of people in a sustainable and planet-friendly manner. Our understanding of what animals do, the ecosystem services that are provided within natural habitats, how animals can be beneficial to human actions, how they pollinate our crops, how they ensure that habitats remain healthy, how they help us fight disease. All of these things can be investigated by looking at animal behaviour. And hopefully in the future, we can see less examples like this one, of species going extinct because of human actions. This is the great auk, a large flightless bird that was considered the original penguin. This is a stuffed animal in a museum. This animal is no longer around because humans did not understand animal behaviour. They did not fully understand the natural world. But we have seen that change, and we have seen an increasing movement to bring the natural world closer to us, which facilitates the study of animal behaviour and brings it closer and more accessible to many more people. This is the London Wetland Centre, a brilliant example of how you can create an extremely biodiverse nature reserve in the middle of a crowded urban environment, making biodiversity accessible to all and relevant to all too. This short presentation has explained some of the diverse reasons why the study of animal behaviour is so important, not only for allowing us to learn more about the animals around us, and because it tells us a lot about human evolution and human behaviours, but also, perhaps most importantly, it tells us about our own impacts on the natural world and how we can help ensure the natural world remains healthy and biodiverse well into the future.